All right, I think we could get started. And since this space is recorded, if anyone joins later, they can just listen in from the start. So, welcome everyone to the Jump Crypto and Injective Twitter space. Really excited to have all of you here. We're gonna chat through the recent funding announcement, obviously, but then get into some sort of market dynamics and also some general chats with the Jump team here. But before we start, just because we have two different communities today, both from the Jump side and the Injective side, it'd be good to do a quick round of intros. Maybe we can start off with Said and Sean, and then Eric could go next. If you guys could introduce yourself and also your company briefly, that'd be great.
Yeah, totally. Hey guys, Saeed. At Jump, I work on strategic partnerships, and what that really means is kind of working with different ecosystems, different builders within those ecosystems to leverage all the different things that Jump does. Jump is kind of an interesting player in the crypto space in the sense that it it is known for trading, but it's also known for a lot of other things. Mainly our contributions to different building efforts on the infrastructure side. We've been big contributors to Wormhole, Pith, different L1s, and really kind of leveraging our engineering talent and muscle to help build what we think are critical pieces of infrastructure that builders need to develop products. So, I try to work with as many people in the space who are trying to make that future happen. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I do at Jump. Maybe Sean, you want to give a little background on you?
Sure. So my name is Sean Ballard. I've been at Jump for a little over 3 years, predominantly focus on trading and sort of our exchange relationships, either mostly in like the sort of centralized exchange side of the business, so helping manage the trading and forming new partnerships where we can and where it deems suited. So I've been in trading for a really long time, a little bit more well-heeled than probably Syed. I've been an options trader for 20 years, so seen a lot of different market dynamics, and yeah.
Yeah. Hey guys, this is Eric, co-founder and CEO of Injective Labs. So Injective Labs is one of the core contributors to Injective, which is a blockchain built for finance. And Injective offers kind of this suite of powerful smart contracts layer alongside a diverse array of modules that developers can utilize to create the best possible and the most capital efficient DeFi applications. So whether you're building a decentralized exchange, prediction market, or lending protocol, Injective provides you with a plug-and-play solution to customize for your needs.
Yeah, appreciate the intros all around. This is your moderator for today, Mirza. I head up BD efforts at Injective. So just as a quick recap, we're going to dive into some specific questions about the funding announcement itself, and then later get into the market, the trading environment, which I think Sean will have lots of cool insights on, DeFi, and obviously the rise of sector-specific or app-specific chains. We'll also leave some questions at the end so that the audience members could potentially ask questions. Don't hold me to it because there are a ton of questions to get through. So leave your questions in the call questions channel on our Discord. And if in case we don't get around to answering them on this call, we'll be sure to answer them on Discord later on. So no worries on that front. Okay, so without further ado, for the uninitiated, let's kick things off by talking about the round itself. So earlier this month, we basically announced a pretty major round and overall collaboration with Jump, with also BH Digital participating, which is sort of Brevin Howard's crypto arm. Obviously, pretty great news, but it'd be good to dive deeper into the details. So maybe we can kick things off just by understanding what the funding round entails. How exactly does it help Injective moving forward? Maybe Eric, you could chime in on this first.
Sure. Yeah, really excited to be working with Jump and seeing Jump joining Injective on this mission. So on a high level, the round helps in a number of ways. First of all, Injective is have a very long ongoing effort for supporting developer and dApp ecosystem that's recently enabled. So many apps are migrating started migrating over from other chains. A great example will be Aperture, which had over 100 million in TVL on Terra previously, and it's currently creating a basis trading protocol on top of Injective. And there are a lot of also very exciting and new native dApps beginning to build. Frontrunner, which has had a very, very successful testnet thus far, is building the first fully decentralized sports betting prediction market platform, and is already backed by some of the biggest names in the TradFi industry. And then a second major point, of course, is to continue increasing the liquidity across dApps built on top of Injective. And some of you can already start to notice this on exchange dApps, where Atom Market has one of the highest levels of liquidity across any decentralized network. And this means that essentially zero slippage for the end user compared to any type of typical AMM protocols. And you can also expect much more of this going forward, ramping up over a short time period.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's obviously going to be pretty great. We've been chatting with Saeed and the overall team at Jump for a while now. So it helps overall ecosystem growth and it's quite exciting. I guess to switch gears for a second, it's great to obviously hear the funding news and then obviously the fact that, yes, it will help Injective's growth story. But maybe Saeed, you could tap into exactly why you decided to back Injective in the first place. So what are some reasons you saw that made Injective stand out to you guys over at Jump?
I think what kind of the space that Injective's playing in is really interesting. The idea that it's a pretty powerful cross-chain protocol that kind of is connecting to a lot of new chains and sort of positioning itself as a DeFi gateway, so to speak. I think that's something that Jump's really interested in. Really think that the future of DeFi and a lot of the things that people want to do in crypto is going to be cross-chain, and so L1s such as Injective and protocols that are starting out thinking, how can I be cross-chain from day one, is super interesting to us. I also think that having kind of this standout exchange like Injective Pro built on top of the L1 is super interesting, just because it's an awesome decentralized exchange. It kind of behaves a little bit like a centralized exchange, but with all of the properties that you want from DeFi, like censorship resistance and interoperability, which I think is a big one that Injective brings to the space. So yeah, I think that's interesting. That's a future that we're building towards. I think as new users enter the space, and also new builders enter the space, it doesn't make sense to have to figure out where you're where can I access these products or where can I trade these products, or do I have the right assets. I think you guys are doing a lot of awesome work to abstract all of that complexity away so that when someone does come and wants to participate in DeFi, they have a great experience. They have a lot of the powerful features kind of available to them in one ecosystem. So I'm really excited for that future, and I think that's why we're excited to partner up and work with you guys.
Yeah, sounds great. I mean, that's a great layup for me personally because I did want to switch gears for a second and get into Injective Pro. So for those of you who don't know, Injective Pro is the marquee app built on top of Injective, the blockchain itself. And already it's processed over $7 billion to date. It provides a very sex-like experience to anyone who's used it from a front-end interface level, but also gives you a number of unique sort of API connectivity for institutions to sort of access the trading capabilities. I think the next question is more for you, Sean, just because you've had a lot of experience trading within the SEC space and exchanges in general. What have you been seeing in terms of the growth of DeFi exchanges, and whether or not you believe that they'll continue to pose a threat to the current SEC environment?
So I would probably say that a lot of centralized exchanges want to dip their toe into DeFi, and they're starting to play around with exploring that space. In terms of like overall growth of DeFi and just sort of getting better institutional adoption, I think that's still the tricky point, or has been the tricky point. And I think from a standpoint of why we're really attracted to Injective is that it is really built for an institutional adoption, and really without that institutional adoption and like how much they can bring to the table in terms of trading volume and revenue, and that is going to be a real key to success. And that's what we really are sort of hitched our wagon to here, is that we feel that Injective is a great platform for more institutional adoption into DeFi. So central DeFi that looks like centralized exchanges is pretty nice to us. It makes it a little cleaner from our perspective to trade. There are definitely some hiccups with sort of certain DeFi protocols out there, but I think that it's a really attractive solution, and getting that institutional adoption into it, and that's tricky, right? Because institutions still are trying to figure out, in a lot of ways, how do I even buy Bitcoin? And like a custody solution on top of that, and sort of helping solve for those pain points is really going to be a huge first mover advantage for the space.
Yeah, I mean, that also sort of starts to answer some of my next question, I guess. But what do you think are some of those catalysts? So I think you started getting into it with things like Injective, obviously providing new gateways into DeFi for institutions. But what do you think are still the roadblocks? Because whenever I talk to a number of these firms, it still seems like a lot of them are in wait and watch mode, sort of just seeing things from the sidelines. And even if they're getting in, they're sort of doing the bare minimum and maybe just purchasing these assets rather than interacting directly on the protocol level itself. So many would argue that a lot of the DeFi space is still very much retail driven, at least to an extent, with only a few major institutions playing a role. Do you see that trend continuing, where a few institutions sort of continue to lead this space, or do you see this becoming a lot more dynamic and competitive moving forward?
So I think a few things need to be solved for in order to really get everyone comfortable. Institution in general, like big banks, like just to sort of stereotype all big banks, their technology pretty much sucks. They're not great when it comes to like first mover advantage in a technology standpoint, and that's where I think like DeFi and this space really solves a big problem for them, because they don't have the teams or the resources to really go after it. Where I think that there's the custody solution, people are still pretty leery about holding assets and the risk around holding assets. So that is still something yet to be really solved for in a pretty scalable way that people are comfortable with. And then I think like the biggest elephant in the room is regulation. A lot of these banks or institutions are in the U.S., they're in Europe, they're in Asia, that have pretty conservative views on compliance. And until there's like a real like good road on where that's going to live, and what's going to be considered decentralized and not decentralized, and what's a security and not a security, is it going to be the CFTC or the FTC or the SEC that's going to regulate, or CFTC or the SEC regulate things? It's still pretty much a jump ball. So I think that like all institutions, they kind of want to know what the rules of the game are, and the last thing they want to do is jump on the field and then have the goalpost moved on them. So I think that everyone likes some guardrails in place, and that I think you really start to see institutions unlock and really start to play in the space. But I don't want to discount the presence of retail. And if you look at like certain markets in the U.S., like options markets in the U.S., the last couple of years have predominantly been driven by retail investing. like meme stocks, but not just meme stocks. Order sizes are down in options markets. Like I think right now, like the average order size in a U.S. option is a 4 lot. Like they're really making a big impact. And so while institutions are definitely key, don't discount the momentum and the effect that retail participation can have on a space.
Yeah, very, very comprehensive answer. Did you guys want to chime in, Said, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sean did a good job of kind of laying out how a lot of the institutions think about participating in this space. I think it's just like every month that passes, you're seeing more people enter the market in various ways. People are dipping their toes. They're as the guidelines and some of the regulations become clearer. Like to me, that's just clear that more people will come in. I think that's kind of the path that we're traveling on, and you kind of see it with either some of the stuff that's happening in terms of bills that are going through Congress, or some of the politicians out there that are trying to say, hey, we do support this. We want comprehensive regulations and guidelines out there. We want these jobs in the U.S. We want our U.S. companies that do really well to be able to participate and not have to go offshore to do it. So, generally my outlook is bullish. It's just a kind of a time function on when these things happen. But yeah, and also the retail point is extremely important, right? I think as more retail does come into crypto, it's going to be a bigger and bigger opportunity for these institutions to not pass up. And so, yeah.
Yeah. I would like to just add on is that compared to, like a few years ago, the institutions are already starting to come in a very obvious and in a very public way. And obviously, seeing from Injective Labs and the overall Injective community, it's already been backed by some of the best ones from the very start, which like Cumberland, Pantera being somewhat of a traditional Tiger Cup transition into crypto, and they're all major movers and shakers from the traditional world as well. And I think overall for crypto, at least from the perspective of the builder, the key is to create better gateways for institutions, so these larger financial firms would actually want to use. Namely, number one is satisfying their and building tools that can meet their compliance requirement and allow them to dip their toes into the water. And then on top of that, building a more robust, more capital efficient infrastructure to really drive home on the point that a decentralized financial infra is a superior model compared to the central matching and clearing and settlement model. And obviously, Injective, in the 5 to 10 year horizon, may actually become that, which is a compressed order book infra for financial primitives, and kind of becoming this decentralized clearinghouse for all things derivatives or all things spot. And on top of that, the incentive programs and initiatives within the ecosystem will also become kind of like this strong catalyst over time to drive in more smart money and more smart players, and to allow them to kind of subsidize their switching costs and so forth.
Nice. Appreciate all it takes. I guess a broader question on everyone's mind, whether you're institution or retail, are sort of the macro environment markets in general right now, honestly. So the Fed is continuing to tighten a little bit to potentially curb inflation. So how long do you guys assume that this cycle lasts? I think a lot of the listeners here are probably wondering a similar thing, but I think we have some really cool minds in the space today. So it would be good to hear your takes on it, whether that be regarding the overall macro markets, crypto markets in general, etc.
If you don't mind, maybe I'll jump in. I have some opinions on the Fed and their ability to control inflation. But so if you look at like what the Fed has done and their sort of track record with curbing inflation, like it's been pretty piss poor. Like months ago, everything was transitory until it's not, and now it's like we hit one side of the guardrail, and now we're going to whip the car back over to the other side. So I think like the Fed's tools and their ability to curb inflation are pretty, especially with geopolitical risk, are pretty inept in a lot of ways. And if you've seen the market come back the way it has over the last few months, like they're really pricing in like the Fed is going to thread the needle on this. And I don't think we've seen necessarily the worst of it. Or we've seen the end of it. Maybe we've seen the worst of it, but definitely not the end of it. So, you know, what really like sort of drives inflation or sustained inflation is wage inflation. And we haven't seen too much like along those lines, but most of it's just been sort of commodity driven or retail supply shock driven. So I think it will sort of serve itself out over the next year, but don't be too shocked if you see some overreactions to by the Fed and some of their tools, because they're pretty blunt and have some pretty they can have some pretty detrimental, I guess maybe not detrimental is the word, but not overly great results as a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what everyone's looking for is everyone's looking at the inflation number. I think what everyone wants to see is inflation top. That may or may not have happened. I have no idea, but I won't speak to how effective the Fed's tools or who's going to save the day. But I do know that there's a lot of components that go into that inflation number. Some of it being supply chain problems, some of it being just kind of the response to different crises over the past 10 years. But at some point, inflation will top. It'll start to come down, and I think that's kind of the point where a lot of people are going to be like, okay, well, what does the world look like a year, 2 years out once we feel really comfortable that inflation's on its way down? I think that'll be kind of a catalyst for crypto, just because it's a highly correlated asset to the broader market. And so kind of that's what I'm looking out for. It's a pretty simple view, but I think that's when things start to get a little bit more risk on. Also, I kind of look at just the entire space as kind of one of the best momentum or growth sectors that there can be, just because the products that are getting built and the products that are getting built can be 10x better experiences. I think Sean mentioned this earlier, but just the idea of disintermediating all of these different players that are required in the TradFi space, that is a much better way to trade. So just extremely fast settlement, almost instant settlement, is something that is probably the future of trading. And so those narratives also will play a key role in terms of how this market goes into the next cycle. I also think that every cycle in crypto kind of like raises the bar on what can be successful, right? So we saw the ICO boom. We saw this past cycle where you had to do a lot more than what those protocols that were successful during that cycle. Now you had to actually build something. You had to get some sort of usage. I think next cycle the bar gets higher. Where you actually start looking at either revenues or user growth, MAUs, DAUs. You start to get some of these metrics that allow you to do some sort of fundamental analysis on what value the technology or the community that you're building is creating. So those are the kind of things that I'm looking at. I think the macro situation is obviously one of the most important things to that will affect crypto regardless of what happens, just because we're so correlated to it. But I guess that's my thoughts on that.
I think the recent cycle has proven time and time again that rational expectation is not the case for the global market. Like a medium, 5-year horizon. And obviously the previous two has had a lot of really good summarizing points on the overall macro market and what to expect from it. But I would like to just add that having the Fed coming up with something that will make everyone happy at Jackson Hole has a lower chance compared to me skiing down from the top of the mountain at Jackson Hole.
Yeah, I guess okay. I guess we're not the biggest fans of the Fed, which is good. I don't know. No comment. No comment on this. Okay, so I think what you guys were talking about actually serves as a great segue into the next point. It's yes, macro is obviously very important, but builders are going to continue to build, and both you guys at Jump and us here at Injective have been through cycles in the past. So it'd be great to sort of dive into more of the builder space and talk about what things we're working on right now. Maybe Eric, you could kick things off, and then would obviously love to hear from Sean and Said on some of the things they have cooking over at Jump.
Yeah, so Helix, of course, is a pretty big project that we've been working on and should be out shortly. I have no idea what Helix is, so I'll just wait for a Twitter announcement on that. Just kidding. But that being said, there's been quite a few things that we've been working on for a year plus, for a much longer time compared to Helix, for even more exciting primitives that we hope to unveil this quarter. And this is actually the big launch that I was hinting at during my talk with CryptoCito and the Cosmos community, slated to be released on the Cosmosverse conference. So that's something to certainly look forward to. And we plan on also upgrading the developer experience even more so that it becomes more seamless than ever to launch your dApp on top of Injective and really optimize the overall onboarding process, and also the experience interacting with Cosmos and some of the native modules within Injective, so that they can really use this ecosystem as their canvas for some exciting advanced DeFi primitives.
Yeah, and Said and Sean, if you guys want to chime in, I know you guys are working on a couple of cool initiatives, hackathons, etc. that I know one is happening in just a couple of weeks. So any big things we should look out for or expect on that end?
Yeah, we've got a great wormhole hackathon. It's called XHack. It's super exciting. I think it's the first kind of event that brings together a bunch of the top L1s in the space. A bunch of their teams are going to be out there. We're going to have some great speakers. We're going to have you guys out there, obviously. We're going to have the founders of Aptos and Sui out there. We're going to have the Solana team, near. I'm missing a few, but yeah. So it's really cool to have all of those guys participate in a month-long hackathon. I think it's going from September 26th all the way till October 21st. Inviting a bunch of the great projects in this space to come out there and meet other new builders, experienced builders, kind of learn from each other. Many of these apps are building cross-chain for either they're established and they're kind of unlocking the capabilities of going cross-chain and being able to attract users from other chains, and a lot of them are also builders for the first time trying to figure out which team to join first, right? So they will launch on multiple chains using Wormhole. So super excited for XHack. If you're a developer in the space, if you're someone who's interested in getting to know some of these teams, you can go to jumpcrypto.com/xhack, or just Google it. You'll find the link. You can apply to attend, and it should be a good time. On the other side, Jump is obviously working on a bunch of different stuff, contributing to a lot of really, really cool infrastructure projects. You may have seen the Fire Dancer announcement, which is, Jump's R&D team is taking a pretty serious swing at building a second validator, a second client for Solana. The mission there is to increase performance substantially. Really push the edge on what can happen in terms of distributed computing and building out some of these distributed systems. So super excited for that. Go to our Jump Crypto website and you'll see some videos from some of the people who are working on it. Kanev, the president of Jump Crypto, gave a really nice video where it was kind of funny. So you guys should check it out. Kevin Bauer is our chief scientist at Jump Trading, is leading the project. And we've got a bunch of stuff cooking, man. We're working on this new silo project that we just released a blog post on it. So if anyone who's listening wants to keep up with some of the cool stuff that Jump Crypto is working on, go to our website, check out our blogs. We've got our research team is constantly putting out some really great pieces on the space, on different types of technologies, and on the projects that we're interested in and we're contributing to.
That sounds great. And I guess Saeed, of course, in a previous question was sort of alluding to this, but a big sticking point about crypto has been it often works in narratives. So obviously in 2017, we saw the ICO boom. After that, during this current cycle, we saw the rise of DeFi. We saw L1 rotations. We saw gaming and metaverse and NFTs pop up. So these many of these trends have been sort of short-lived. Like, for example, the ICO boom, but many have managed to stay afloat regardless of overall market dynamics. In my opinion, the infrastructure projects or builders working on core infra have relatively managed to stay afloat compared to some of these other narratives. But it'd be good to hear your thoughts or takes on some trends you see coming up, or what do you think is currently shaping the crypto market? What should our viewers be looking out for moving forward in terms of crypto market dynamics?
Yeah, I mean, kind of speaks to the earlier macro question, which is like, at least the way that we look at it as a team is on a long enough time horizon. We believe in these types of technologies kind of leading the way and transforming the way that global trade happens and works. And so you're less concerned about the market cycles. You're less concerned about the macro, and you're more concerned about, what is building something like Injective unlock for the future? How does that solve the problems that we see today? Jump Crypto being a very old player in the traditional markets, a big player in the traditional markets, is kind of uniquely, it kind of really understands the pain points and understands, hey, how would this system be better? What are the things that these different protocols or what does decentralization solve in terms of being able to participate in global markets? And so for us, we're really trying to contribute to things that we think bridge the gap between TradFi and DeFi. We know that there's some 10x, 100x, 1000x improvements that these distributed systems can bring, but there are a lot of challenges and problems that need to be solved before we get there, before we kind of bridge the gap between TradFi and DeFi, right? Where you can trade everything and do everything that you can do on TradFi, but you can do it in DeFi. And so the ultimate goal is that this is just, one of those like critical upgrades to the entire system. It may happen in 3 years, it may happen in 5 years, it may happen in 10 years, but Jump Crypto kind of got started like in the options pits, right, where people are just like yelling and screaming, trying to trade different types of commodities, and then from there, it's gone through several long, big, iconic cycles, right? Going from the pits to electronic trading, right? That was a massive change. A lot of people didn't cross that bridge, but it fundamentally changed the way that we trade. Jump Crypto was able to do that, and it saw that early, and it completely changed its operation, right, and became a technology company. Then if you look at the next kind of like iconic upgrade, you would say, okay, well, electronic trading to high frequency trading. That's a huge bridge to cross. A lot of people didn't make it across that bridge. You know, Jump Crypto was able to kind of like evolve into the type of institution that can compete at that level and really build technology, you know, at the edge, and solve a lot of the challenges that you need to solve to be able to cross that bridge and do really well and excel at that, right? And kind of and be a dominant player in that space. And so I look at, you know, this bridge that we're on right now is, okay, well, you know, we went from that to now crypto, or, you know, decentralized finance or decentralized trade. Um, you know, we're still on that bridge, but it is an asymmetric bet that this is going to be an upgrade for the space, in which we say, hey, that's how we did things before. This is how we do things now. You know, no guarantees on what the outcomes are going to be, but you know, if I look at the history of Jump, I'm pretty excited to be working on this team at this institution, helping to solve these problems and working with people in this space to kind of bring about that future. So, yeah, that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about builders building, solving the increasingly complex problems of DeFi, that kind of allow us to cross that bridge, and so that this is a better environment to trade in for everyone, for institutions, for retail, for the broader market in general. That's what we like to keep an eye out on, and that's why we're excited for what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I feel like overall, you know, Jump moving into crypto and taking a much more involved role, you know, being a builder feels literally like a dimensionality reduction strike into the space, because historically speaking, I've been seeing, you know, the smartest people I know joining Jump, and you know, you guys always retain, you know, like the smartest people in, you know, engineering and math and all aspects. So I would say that you guys are going to have a great time.
I appreciate it. You're too kind, Eric. You guys have a pretty solid team as well. I got to visit your offices and meet a lot of the different people that are working on at Injective or building things on Injective. And so obviously some of the teams that you mentioned earlier on the call, those are some pretty sharp guys, and girls as well. So excited to see what you guys build.
Likewise.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into the next topic, which is Said was sort of mentioning a bunch of bridges that basically we essentially need to cross. Obviously, these are metaphorical bridges, but I feel like a major bridge that we're potentially at right now, or a crossroads, so to speak, is the rise of sector-specific chains. Essentially, in the past, a lot of chains used to be very general purpose. Sorry. But now they've sort of expanded into sector-specific use cases. So, for example, Injective is a blockchain built for finance, which is specifically targeting DeFi use cases. What do you guys think about this overall narrative? Do you see it sort of continuing to play out in this multi-chain environment, or not?
I mean, yeah, I think it's definitely, I think it's a symptom of people trying to build more performant, increasing the power of some of the products, right? And it generally is, I think it makes a lot of sense for something like Injective, where it's like, hey, we want to build this extremely critical piece of infrastructure that that can be almost like a public good, right? The order book. That you guys have built, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense for these kind of sector specific app chains. But you know what excites us is when people can build on top of it. Like I consider Injective first and foremost an L1, right? But an L1 with a very a very deep focus on here's what we're solving, here's what we're giving you to be able to create, you know, an infinite amount of products, right? whatever people can come up with and what people think the market needs. I think those sector specific chains will probably do well. Um, I think there is some people who just kind of go after it because it's kind of the hip, cool thing to do, but they don't have a very clear vision of why do I need to create a chain just for this, right? So if you can answer the second question of like, hey, why is this so important to do well, and who could possibly want to build on this, then it probably doesn't make as much sense. But if you have a very clear core piece of infrastructure that you're trying to provide, I see that as kind of important and makes a lot of sense to do.
Yeah. Sean or Eric, do you guys have different takes on that at all?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I would say like one of the pretty exciting point is how interwoven the current multi-chain ecosystem is. Bridge is playing an increasingly heavier role and really establishing a really important and valuable presence within the overall crypto ecosystem, and I think it's only going to increase exponentially. So, whether that be some the exciting stuff that folks at Jump and Wormhole team is building, which already can allow Injective to bridge to Solana and multiple EVM-based ecosystem and some of the new and exciting ecosystems, and on top of that, some of the inherent standards by leveraging the Cosmos SDK stack. Being able to take advantage of IBC, which is kind of like a generic communication layer. I think all of those are going to be more and more exciting and pertinent over time for a growing ecosystem and for whether that be app chain narrative or generalized layer one narratives. It's basically selling jeans during the gold rush.
Yeah, for sure. I think, my next question was around interoperability. So obviously, as you guys were mentioning before, Jump works a lot on infrastructure projects in general. And one of the coolest infrastructure projects, in my opinion, right now is Wormhole, that's bridging together a lot of different chains, whether they be non-EVM compatible chains like Solana or EVM compatible chains like Avalanche. And obviously, we at Injective have been working with that team pretty closely over the past few months to get it up and running. It'd be great to dive into specifics if possible. So sort of some things the Wormhole team might be looking at, or your view on interop in general. So as new chains are starting to rise, I think Said also mentioned earlier, the Aptos and Sui founders are also going to the Wormhole hackathon in Chicago in the next couple of weeks. So and Wormhole's obviously working with a lot of these different chains. So how does that sort of impact the overall space moving forward? How does that make sort of the ecosystem more composable with one another?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think Wormhole unlocks a lot of the things that users want, right? You want the free flow of assets, you want the free flow of data, and so Wormhole's designed to connect to all of these different chains, connecting Injective to Solana, connecting Injective to all the EVM chains as well, and then when Aptos and Sui are launched, connecting to these completely new computational environments. So I think it's super important to be thinking from a interoperability standpoint, right? Like what can I offer my ecosystem? How can other ecosystems leverage the technology that I'm building here? And Wormhole's a great solution for that. Wormhole can be used as a token bridge. It does have a token bridge on top, and many people think of it that way. As there's the portal bridge, there's a couple of other front ends for that bridge, but it's a lot more than that. It also gives the ability for builders to be able to access users from other chains. So you can not only send assets, but you can send smart contracts instructions. You can send data, right? So Pith is bridging data to all EVM chains. It's going to be bridging data to Injective. That's an Oracle. That's great to see. You can have cross-chain applications built on one chain and then launch light clients on other chains, so that users that have assets in those other environments or in those other ecosystems can easily interact with your smart contract on your main chain. So if I'm front runner, for example, and there's a Solana user that wants to interact with my contract on Injective, they can easily just connect their wallet. Wormhole can the Wormhole technology can help swap, bridge, and send the contract instruction that's necessary for them to do what they're trying to do on that dApp on that other chain. So I think there's a lot that Wormhole unlocks more than just bridging assets. I think the developer community out there is starting to realize it. There's a pretty strong cross-chain narrative going on right now. Partially the reason why we're doing XHack is to kind of show how how much traction is happening in that space, because it's pretty clear that you want to be able to do these kinds of things. You want a world where you can abstract away the L1, and you can have users anywhere. I think that's really important for Injective because, as I said earlier, it playing that gateway role is something that's super exciting for us. So being able to connect to all of these other chains, and being able to get data from cross-chain oracles like Pith, to be able to list assets that may not be native to the Cosmos ecosystem or to Injective itself, it makes the experience a lot better. And then as people build their dApps on Injective, they can leverage the Wormhole bridge to be able to attract users who otherwise would have to do a bunch of other steps to be able to interact with their product. Now it's as easy as a click, where they can just swap, bridge, and do whatever they need to do. So I think, yeah, that's what excites me about Wormhole. That's what excites me about Wormhole connecting to Injective. I'm watching that process, keeping tabs on that. I'm excited for that to launch, and kind of see what builders do with it, and also what users starting to take advantage of those capabilities.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it'd be great to get some insights from Sean on this. So one aspect I'd like to personally dive into is how interop plays a role in the trading environment right now, because I think that's what keeps a lot of traders away from interacting directly with DeFi due to sort of the non-composable environments, the different sort of smart contract capabilities available on different L1s, which is why I still think SEX volumes, etc., far outpace the DEX volumes today. It'd be great to hear how you think interop plays a role in sort of, equalizing the space or playing the level field a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just like to qualify like Wormhole and cross-chain bridging, like it's really hard, like solving for that. Like I don't think no one's really addressed how hard this solution is. It's really, really tricky. And having the ability and the team that Wormhole does to be able to do this and pull it off, like we've obviously had a couple bumps in the road on it, but like the vision and what for it's pretty unique. Like when you were talking earlier about like the building in the space and kind of how we are at Jump with like sanitations, it's hard to build. You can't build the get the roads laid down, and that's kind of what Wormhole really does. So in terms of the trading side of that, yeah, I think that cross chain, like assets across chain are definitely leaves people a bit uneasy. I think that with our support of Wormhole and we've tried to help quelch those areas of nervousness. So it's a big bet that we've made, and I think like in the end, when it's sort of fully solved for, that it really has a lot of runway, because it's like when you go to the hospital, right? Like I go to the hospital, I get a procedure done, and then I change towns and it's another hospital, but they can't get my records from the other hospital. It's like a massive pain in the ass. And, crypto is not just going to be one blockchain. It's going to be multiple chains, and solving for that and helping reduce the friction across chain is going to be a very powerful solution going forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Did anyone else want to chime in on that, or, like with respect to traders or interoperability in general?
Yeah, I would say like one of the most challenging aspect of bootstrapping or starting up a new ecosystem and a new blockchain, whether that be app specific or generalized, is bootstrapping the assets that's native within a chain. We've kind of seen that for in the previous few years on during like the 2017 and 2018 boom, is that before they start doing anything, they always have to think about building a bridge to really bring over the asset, the liquidity to kind of bootstrap the asset used for all the applications and all the ideas the developers within that ecosystem want to explore. And another really important and emerging trend is that a lot of these scaling solutions and also applications that relies on scaling of the underlying environment often notices that it's either a pick between building their own application specific chain, or building on top of a relatively more centralized layer 2 solution, or building in a completely new environment, and they're sacrificing essentially a lot by not having a robust and seamless bridge infrastructure. And I think by having a diversity of bridge solutions, like the amazing thing that the Wormhole team is building, and also some of the inherent offerings on Injective via IBC, et cetera, it really allows newer ecosystem, especially fully decentralized ecosystems, to bootstrap their liquidity and really to be able to achieve everything that they need, and maybe even expand into a true multi-chain world where applications and also specific use cases can be done on another chain, and allow that ecosystem to be really optimizing for and specialize in a certain application sector.
Great. Yeah, we're almost at the top of the hour, so I do want to be mindful of everyone's time and start wrapping up. I guess as a last question, let's hear a hot take from each of you. So you guys have obviously been in this space for several years. Ideally, the hot take should be something that most people in crypto or the markets wouldn't agree with generally. But yeah, it could be about anything. This is extremely open-ended.
That's a hard one. Let me think about it for a sec.
Yeah, no worries. It doesn't have to be immediate. And yeah, general logistic things as our speakers have a moment to think. So I know we weren't able to get through questions just because there were a lot of questions to get through. So if you guys do have any questions, leave them on Discord or Telegram and we'll get back to you. And this space will be recorded. We'll be putting up a recording later today, ideally. So be on the lookout for that in case one of you had to hop off early, etc.
I think a hot take, I don't know if this is very hot, but I think just what's happening with ETH and the merge is going to be really interesting. I just don't think that people are thinking deeply in terms of the ramifications or like the second order effects of ETH at this size, kind of completing that process, right? Just having like ETH2 and ETH1 and ETH Classic. But not only that, but like, people kind of have been debating that a bunch. But like, what happens when you have like all these ERC20 tokens, right? You have like Uniswap on the old chain. I just feel like that's something that I haven't had enough time to dive deeply in. So maybe someone on this call knows more than I do. But I am trying to keep tabs and wondering how people are going to manage these different assets. And if you're a uni holder before the merge, what happens if you're a uni holder after the merge? What do markets look like on that day? What are people going to be doing? So that's just something that I think is interesting. I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think to that note, like one thing that we've seen from our side is one thing that's consistent is that everyone's inconsistent on how they're going to approach it. So I hope it works out, but it seems like it's teeing up to be a master cluster. So everyone is like either not really thinking like he's like said deeply about it, or just people are handling it differently, and it's really inconsistent across the board.
Yeah, I think a relatively more hot take is that you cannot be not bullish on the ETH merge, because it's essentially a nuclear war trade, where essentially if you're not bullish on it, or you're taking on the short side, betting on the fact that the merge would fail, or there's going to be something catastrophic, that means that the entire space is going to go down with it in a sense. And therefore, from a game theoretic perspective, it only makes sense for you to long it, because even if you win the short bet, there would be nothing left for you to trade on.
Yeah, that's a pretty dystopian take, but okay, well, I'll take it. Cool. I think we had a really great session today where we covered a bunch of questions around the market, Injective, the Jump collab. Appreciate everyone joining. Appreciate our speakers for the insights and the cool alpha that they shared. So yeah, be on the lookout for more of these. Be sure to follow Jump on Twitter. That's at Jump _. Also be sure to follow Injective. That's at Injective _. And yeah, we will be in touch soon and continue to do more cool things moving forward. So appreciate everyone joining.
Thanks, Mirza. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, anytime, guys.
Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Bye.